You're on mute.
So the subject that is being taught, the subject for the listeners is teaching which promotes the attainment of unsurpassed enlightenment, which is pursued for the benefit of all sentient beings. And with that understanding, then all the participants should develop the motivation that is in keeping with that subject matter. And so I request that you generate such a motivation, and then to remind you that the subject that is being taught, specific subject that's being taught is from Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, especially the section on cultivating shamatha. I think serene, I forget exactly how it's translated in the Lamrim, serene abiding or serene meditation. And so more specifically, where we reached in the discussion is in relation to the meditation topic itself, the meditation object then there are 3 particular sections, and we have now reached the 3rd, the bottom of page 23 on the text, which is addressing the synonyms for the object of meditation.
미빈 남단 때만이 제 강라 셈송이 시 띵엔진이 미된 나르시비
You went on mute.
년살에 제 송년 대양 송년 시장차 띵엔진이 쳔마당 띵엔진이 주기 유당 띵엔진이 탑당 띵엔진이 고당 아니 띵엔진이 고당 일라 제비 땡당 난도 넘버 넘버 또비 류당 난년 시장 차데스 대단히 시중고보다 튕비 송년 디스 민게 남장이 바 리바차고 시송받다고
So then the text is by quotation from the Lamrim Chenmo from Tsongkhapa's great treatise, which so it says so the meditation object is that entity which the mind takes hold of in order to cultivate one-pointed meditation, and that has been referred to as a kind of reflection or a kind of appearance in the mind, and that term that is referred to as an image. Here it says he uses this translation, image. No, I'm sorry. Where is it? The image is that image is called an image. Yeah, all right. So that is the word that I'm translating as reflection. And says then there are also in the Asanga's Shravaka Bhumi, the stages of the listener's path, lists a number of other terms that are considered synonyms for that, which are here listed in quotes as the sign for one to develop concentration, the object in the domain of concentration, the technique or for concentration, the door for concentration, the basis of attention, the body of internal conceptualization, and then the last one is the appearing image. It says these are, so then it says these are all synonyms of the term that's used. The main term that's used is that of being an image, and they essentially all refer to the same thing, which is a meditation object, and they're meant to conform to, so here it says, accord with the object that is known. That's all.
다든다 디나라 든다 다 지 미빈 남다 때바선 다 남장 계지시 된기도 와 라든다 다 미빈 남장 세딩에 마 로드지 제시 슈와이나 그래서 지난 디나라 송여데 이내 다든다 디 띵인징기 미빈 남장 세도와 다디 그랑 sabje 그랑 나라 있는 미빈 남장 송여데 이내 어디라 갈스나 송예 남발로라 남과 디 남장 스비다 띵인 미바디기 송예 되게 남장 세제라 파르네가 맞아 있나 띵인 미바 코랑라 샤나 아니 가스나 띵인 미바당 띵인 미비 송예니 benna 개발 미라와지 가르스나 benna 아주 나와 당 다위 송예스니 benna 추나라 샤야기 뭐게 다위 송예라면 나와 말아와 디나시 미바당 미비 송예세들 개발샤니 송예당 아니 민기 남장 쓰리다 뒤지 민기 남자들이 막 교인수 등위도 와 어디 아니 다 개발 가려서나 미바다 미비 남장 다 미비기 순위 세대가 순위 세대 빼나 미다 받아오지나 미바 미다 받아오지나 미다바디 딘제오 냠비다 그래서 또가 놀라 낭비 낭와 지가 어디다 되니 미비 수녀스니 미바랑젠바 마인장 랑젠바 당 차자위 차니 수녀스니 딘제 아니 개발 하고 있어레스.
So one probably the principal notion that needs to be clarified in relation to this passage is that it stems from the use of the word image or reflection, which is the principal term that is being given synonyms for. So the point that needs to be understood is that when the term reflection or image is the significance of that is that it means specifically it's talking about the image that appears in your mind, and the image that appears in your mind is not necessarily the reality that you're intending to realize. For example, so if you take the import of impermanence. So impermanence is, while it's an abstract object, it's also a condition, a reality, which can be perceived even directly. However, when one begins to meditate on it, one's not able to grasp the direct nature of impermanence itself. Nevertheless, we have an understanding of what that impermanence means, and then based on that, we conceptually form an image in our mind, and then that becomes the basis for our contemplation, for our cultivating one-pointed meditation. So we're cultivating one-pointed meditation in regard to a mental image that we form using conceptualization. That's
다 진짜 디나라다 가스나 게스지 되기도 와티 땡기지 다 민기 남랑세 민기 남랑세다 이게 남랑세네 티 가르쳐서는 다 흉나라마 다지 곰림당 예사다 흉나라 아니 미비 수년들라 민다인도 갑리 띵인생기 되니 가스나 주세다 갑리 띵인생 합세다 갑리 띵 오세 딘제기 민민다와 일단은 고해디 아니 띵인 미바 낭위 낭와 딘제지라 딘이 고거래 딘산 낭와라 슝기 자윤디 아니 딘자와 딘제 다 딘주지 민다와 딘고 딘가 아니 미바 낭위 낭와 수년 되라랑 고해래 진짜 디천이 아니 수년 되게 민기 남장세디 아니 민다와 가주 따는 아니 된다 고해디 아니 딘인지 신의 아무 활동다 근데 딘제지기 근데 값을 봐야지 신내기 띵인생기 아니 미바디 낭위 낭와 이제 낭와세디 당하나서 슝나라다 튼지정지 담고 고주인데 와다지 똑바라 낭위 낭와지 그래서더니 똑바라 낭위 낭와디라 야야야 세르르디 아니 무슨라 낭위 낭와라 되더니 뒤 튼지 많이 받차도다 나 좀 무슨라다 담고 또 경기더니 로디기 낭와디라 튼지다 도비 나와들 왔다 도비 나와들랑 곰 잡잡 남신나 나와디더니 배 튼지다 맞아봤을 때 오늘 전에 배 진짜로 나용도 아니 무슨 나와서 다디 아니 미바랑세 바디도 차고레스 그래서니 다디 사지 미비 수년들라 다지 고고주도 당 치수 누와 튜미값수 미바디기 뭐디 나주들 미다와 요사레스 이제 So at one level, this quote from the Shravakabhumi is simply listing terms that are more or less equivalent and that can be found, in literature, in Buddhist literature, whether it's canonical literature or other, treatises, and if you take each of the terms, of course, you can literally explain each of those terms in such a way that it conveys essentially the same meaning. So when you say the door to concentration, it means
the source or the means of access to develop concentration. When you talk about the domain of concentration, you're talking about something like the sphere of activity in which you are applying yourself in order to cultivate concentration, and so on. However, the main point to recognize here in terms of actual practice is that when you're practicing shamatha, especially initially, you are not at the point where you are able to perceive the deep meanings in such a way that the object itself, that is what you want to be able to focus on one pointedly, is the actual entity itself. So the example before was of impermanence. It could be any other similar important Buddhist teaching. So when we form concepts in our mind, according to Buddhist epistemology, there is a term called dönji, and dönji means kind of the mental image that you develop in your mind, or that forms in your mind as you use words and meanings to develop some kind of mental idea of what it is that you're trying to turn your attention to. So in the beginning of your meditation, that really forms your meditation object. Is if for instance, especially with an abstract subject. However, then through cultivating your mind, if you develop then a proper understanding, a true form of correct cognition in regard to that object, and then you develop one point of concentration with it, then using that as a platform, you're still focusing on a mental image as your meditation object, but then when you start to develop deeper forms of awareness, of knowledge, then that what should I say, comprehension of that object becomes clearer and clearer, and gradually the need for the medium of a mental object becomes lessened and is not relied on as heavily, and you're getting closer and closer to a direct experiential awareness of the object. So the true meditation object is that object that at some point you want to perceive directly. However, at this point, what we need to recognize is that we're essentially meditating on a mental image.
Wada 독진상 다 된다디 다 딩엔싱이 된다디 나 미비 수년디기 민게 남단들아 다 마게 호어디라 되네 가스나 아 디네스는 송도와 대단히 시지 오보다 튕비 수년디 다 시지 오보다 튕바 세저와 다 딘민 민다와 다 소수도 따고 위준전데 가지래스나 소수 이래다 튕미고는 민다와 레스페나 당에 저제니만 우주슈미와 다 딩엔싱이 미비 수년 세대 다 딩엔싱 미과당 되는 찾아와 나와 임비신이 다 수년이라고 지지. 딩엔싱이 주기 유세디 다 딩엔싱이 주디 미과디체 코나 되는 유기 유라디 딩엔싱이 주디 나와 임비신이 오늘 유기 유세 딩엔싱 주기 유신이 로가지셔도와 다 딩엔싱이 탑세대 가서는 아니 델라 때네 나와 델라 때네 딩엔싱이 야 공부도 교회라 팬도 그래서 딩엔싱이 탑스는 민기고를 다 와체 다 딩엔징이 고세되니 가스나 어떤가랑도 캉비 고세되 캉반나라 주연나시 때네 나와들라 때네 딩엔징이 야 딩나라야 아니 로디야 그거에서 딩엔징 고스 딩네신 따와 다나시 일라치비 때 세디 가스나 아니 가스나 코 나와디 가스나 딩엔징 다 가스나 이지 야 공부도 지와지라 미비 땡시지 고라와 왔다 디이 비차네 아니 일라치비 땡스 나 나도 넘버 네바스 아니 넘버 네비 류 라드와다 나도 넘버 또비 류 세데가스나 다셈 나도 또 바와 셈 7월 초 많이 받지 셈 나도야 듀비 아니 가스나 아니 딘제기 드니 가스나 지 nangwaji imbi chane ani lyusne nangdu topi lyuse de junzen tinde jung dawa dana shin nangnyen se de kasna ani nangwa digitini kasna o sunyen dawu imbi chane ani nangnyen se da yagi sunyen dang nangnyen tezi mingi mi dawa kasna yagi namba de nangwi tini na chai dawi chane sunyen se mingda nangnyen se de ko ji nangwa di ngor kye wa chane ani nangwa di rangshin imbi chane ani nangnyen se oda tinde jigitini 민 다연소 아니 소수 칠레 민자 권에더니 슝나라 민 미도더니 용구 주진데 딘디지리 샤스.
So the passage here as it lists the various synonyms, then it ends with the statement that says know these as synonyms of or for the image which accords with the object that is known. So the phrase which says which accords with the object that is known or that is to be known, again is reiterating this point that the image or the reflection is not the thing itself, but is the thing that corresponds to or is similar in nature to the ultimate object that one is seeking to perceive. So if you take each one of those synonyms, you can then interpret the literal sense of the term in a way that conforms to this general point that's being made. So to say that it's an image means that if you go by the Tibetan, nang nyen, nang means something that appears. Nyen means something that is similar to the object that it's a reflection of. For example, when you see the moon in water, that's not the actual moon, but it is an appearance which is similar in nature to the moon that it is a reflection of. So that the term for image, or could also be called a reflection, is understood in that way. And the same thing for the others. When it says the sign of concentration, so the sign of concentration is kind of that mark or that indication that you take hold of in order to cultivate concentration. Similarly, the object of the domain of concentration means then concentration is kind of an exercise or an action that you engage in relation to something. And so that object that you hold in the mind is the object in the domain of concentration. The technique of concentration, similarly, you use the meditation object as a principal method for developing concentration, the door to concentration. We can think of it as just as a door is a means of access to some room or some place that you want to enter. Similarly, by focusing on a particular meditation object and concentrating on it, then you can gain access to the mental state in which you develop one-pointedness of mind. In the same way, the basis of attention is refers to the mind's bringing a particular object to mind, how the mind's attention focuses on something, and so the meditation object is the foundation or the basis that you use for the exercise of cultivating in a habitual way that one-pointedness. The same, the body of internal conceptualization is using body in a figurative term, in a figurative sense, that being that entity, that internal meaning that your mind is focused inward, and you're using conceptual thought as as part of the process of meditation. And then an appearing image is really it's the same term as was translated originally, just as image, but here they use the word nangyen. I'm not sure if the original is actually slightly different than the word that's used for a reflection, but the notion of appearing image is the fact that mental image, that mental object that you're able to form in your mind and to focus on, is something that appears to the mind. So all of these terms are different ways of describing how you take up the meditation object when you begin to cultivate shamatha.
아니 다 된다. 다 미빈 남단 팀비 subject 나온데 되는 다 줍송. 아니 지바치레요네 된다 제라 한도 추수 기비제라. 아니 쉐시.
So that's that's kind of an explanation or a clarification of this particular paragraph on the synonyms for the object of meditation. If there's anything about these terms or about what was explained about how to understand them, then we'll have a question and answer period starting at 8 o'clock. So hold your questions until then, please.
That's subject that the capsule boy niba capsule boy mikba nguswa sen ta kasin yage ani mikba ani ngyo sheba dila subject ani chi mikba sheba ta capsule boy mikba sheba ni gi nani ta capsule boy mikba nguswa di ma du su ni zhang shu gi is ni.
So now the next topic that we get to is just to kind of go back and remind you of the overall structure is that this whole discussion for the past few pages and what we're still on is on the meditation object. And so the way that this subject was introduced was a general overview of the different types of meditation objects. And that's very theoretical based on the Shravakabhumi has a classification of 4 categories that relate to main elements that relate to what we need to understand in relation to types of meditation objects. And then this now shifts to more specific discussion on, then it says, Kapsubhave Mikpa means the meditation object as it's meant to be understood in the present context.
mikpa khangla tene shine nyamna tene ngara changbi dode dara chikdu mangye des khangsa ge cheta ge mikpa soso wa chagwelas chebar du shine mata shi nyebar dumna deja sheche wala soba inani mikpa nyebar che chagwe des te majena shine jidun bi tingin se toba sijans shine ngwe mito na mito bi childes cheba namjong ge mikpa jangjans yu shindu rinpo matoba shine mutuba suna jeba namjongi mikba torwe mutuba taji mubichirus kebarus namdo shecheba ni yebardu lungoba chagosus kansa chanyamba jebe yumo chumwe kansa inani ngar sheba tar mikba ngar sheba namgi nani yi kanstowa mikden chaus.
So and now the first paragraph in the specific meditation objects in this section on specific meditation objects is so just to back up, meditation objects are not only understood in the context of shamatha, there are also meditation objects for the exercise of vipassana or insight meditation. So here it's saying in particular, so he says, but I could probably just read it. It says, there are many objects of meditation, many different types of object of meditation that have been explained. So they were explained earlier in the general overview of meditation objects. And then it raises a rhetorical question. Among those many meditation objects, what's the meditation object that you should base your practice on so that you can achieve or develop serenity here? Serenity is shamatha. So then there was a sutra passage that was cited earlier, and as that passage indicates, that there's no single absolute meditation object that must be used to cultivate shamatha, and more specifically, given the various types of persons that there are categories of persons and their tendencies, actually there's a theory of personality types, that those that are prone to desire, prone to hatred, prone to pride, prone to excessive discursive thoughts, and so on. So those are types of persons that initially to cultivate shamatha, according to the Shravaka in particular, it says there are specific meditation objects that are essential for those types of persons. So it says specifically, if you're determined to achieve serenity, at least, let's see, so saying leave aside practicing vipassana. It says even if you're just seeking to achieve shamatha, then, and you happen to be a person who is, has a strong tendency to develop desire, then there's a specific meditation object that you should use. Or if it's another mental affliction, then there's a different meditation object that is, essential for you to adopt. It says you need to use a certain type of object of meditation. And then, so this is following the point that Asanga makes in the Shravaka. He says that this is not a quote. This is Tsongkhapa writing in the Lamrim Chenmo. So he says there is something that's called a concentration that approximates serenity. A concentration that approximates serenity means you can reach a certain level of one-pointedness of mind that is approximate means, which has some similarity to shamatha, but which is not true shamatha. It says, however, if you don't use the appropriate meditation object for your personality type, then it's suggesting that it's impossible to attain true shamatha. So, he said. So here it says, what's described here as an object of meditation for purifying behavior. That's one of the categories, one of the four main categories of meditation object. And purifying behavior is really a kind of an imprecise translation of the term. The word that here is using for behavior really is talking to a kind of flawed mental tendency, is really what the word that behaviors is meant to convey here. And even though the Tibetan says jeva or jeva. So whichever particular type you have, whichever type of mental flaw that you are subject to, it says, if you happen to be one of those, so there are you could take two different types of persons. The one group is those persons who are subject to those kind of flaws. And those absolutely must use their specific type of meditation object. There's another category who are not particularly subject to very strong mental flaws, or for whom they are all sort of equally. You're subject to all of them to an equal degree, not necessarily one stronger than the other. But in the category where you have a specific tendency to develop one of those particular mental afflictions, it says if you don't use, it says even if you do use the proper meditation object for your particular tendency, your particular category, then it will still take you a very long time to achieve shamatha because you have that flaw. However, if you don't use the proper meditation object for your propensity, then he says, how could you ever expect to be able to achieve shamatha at all? So then, 다 임벌해.
다 딘나 제시지 마 쉬와이나. 다 나든다 디 값수 보 미방 우유수 와서 든다 디 원수 로 사주디 불라. 미방 우유디 든다 디 등교래 이내 다 가서나 미 값수 보 미방 우유수 와디 가서나 다 얘기 미방 망부 좀 어제 제로 와 제반 남주고 미바 케비 미바 미바 소바시 보다 망부 주승 나니 다 신행외 고민인데 미바 컨디지라 샤고래 했으디 다 신행외 곰발라 아니 지가스나 계획지경기 아니 차수니 무바 시체와 이나비나 도자 시체와 등 공도 시체와 이무 시체와다 여기 차수니 무바가 아주 등위도 왔지 반남주가 어떻게 시체와 이나 아니 여기 강사 제답 같은데 있어 강사 제답에서나 딘데기 시체와 이나 신에기 의미 미발 마주 그래 담몽이라 얘기 로디 장고래 시체 반남주 차수니 무바 시체와 이나니 아니 유튜브 고메라 소바 참바 고메라 소바 오 다나신 띵이 가서 딘제 감 어다 우중 고메라 소바 튼조 예바도 차고에디 강사 제자바와 유모 시체와 세디 차소 유모 강한 시체와 있는 대단 유비치도 든도 공고와 다 차소 유모바 시체와 마인비 아니 차냐바와 딘데 아니 공개 밑바들라 소수수 가리 담가체네 강 쪼바들라 지고레스 인도 다 된다 니 값수 바 밑방 외수와 세디기 밑방 외 마금 거니 강사라니 아니 차소 대답이 온도 강교 온도 송도 와 소수 시줄라 따니 아니 대답이 되니 차소 아니 되자셔다 띠무당 아니 나제다 되니 남도라 소바 대답이 온도 송면나니 아니 신이 방우에 고메라 담아 좀 받치에체 온도 송아 있는 당부 뒤 고녀메치도 아니 제반남 중 미발라 소바치다 아니 니송 제거래 했습니다 디갑수 나온데디 송거래 간스나 균센디나 송도와 제반남 중 미바디 마체와 아니 배 신의 지도 받자 모두 신의 거 툭툭 말해 가스나 신의라 아니 배낭랑서 유심 레수루이다 딘데지 당민지 니 띵에지 레고래 다 유심 레수루알라 제 지경기 아니 차소니 모바 고바 시체가 요나 아니 유심 레수루와 소투여거라 메와라 인도자니 아니 배자우지나 말한서 사시 코님발라 디나라 푸사 바르도 부르도 강가파 메와 마수는 사시 코님 두 말와 담보 인도자니 디낭신제니 아니 시 아니 차소 니모부 온도 소메드니 차소 시체와이나 아니 가기 드니 미바도 냐바도 예수 차오레스 다 가리라 예수 제마르스나 다 대다 차소 아니 그배 시체와 마인베드니 천년바당 시중와 있나니 아니 소소 미바 강대와드니 고투니 아니 독수니 겁나 초기레스 다디 낭든지 디송도 어딘지
So what we should understand about this introductory paragraph that relates to the specific meditation object that is going to be taught in the context of the overall Lamrim path is that he's excuse me. Lama Tsongkhapa is reiterating that there are many different points that were already addressed in relation to the meditation object, mainly built around the Shravaka Bhumi's system of 4 categories of meditation object. One of them was the pervasive meditation object, which was a general category of describing what is the nature of meditation object that covers every type of meditation, both shamatha and vipassana. Then there was the object of meditation for one to develop skillfulness in relation to, and then there are several categories of objects that mainly are abhidharma subjects, such as the 5 skandhas and so forth, that you can use as a meditation, as the main focus of your meditation to develop one point of concentration. Then there is this category of the meditation object that enables you to overcome whatever predominant mental affliction you might be subject to. And in relation to that, there are actually 7 categories of persons. So the person who has strong tendency to develop desire, person who has strong tendency to develop hatred, person who has strong tendency to be subject to ignorance, a person who has strong tendency to develop pride, and the 5th one is the person who is subject to very, very much of an active mind, a mind that's always thinking and not able to calm itself. And then the final two are not specific. So the 6th category is a person who still has some tendency to develop mental afflictions, but none of those 5 is predominant. They're all more or less any one of them might occur to you. And then the best category is a person who, as the theory goes, who in a former life had undergone some kind of mental training, and so in this life their mental afflictions are weak, and so that's the ideal person for developing shamatha. So in the case of the first 5, the point that's being made here is, for instance, case of desire, the appropriate meditation object is to meditate on what is called unattractiveness, meditating, for instance, on the repulsiveness of a corpse, and so on. And it's a long subject for how to meditate on that. In the case of hatred, main meditation object is to cultivate loving kindness and all the elements that you need to do to cultivate that as a means of overcoming your hatred. In the case of ignorance, it's dependent origination. In the case of pride, it's called the multiplicity of the constituents, which is analyzing your being into its constituents in order to overcome the sense of an ego and therefore overcome pride. In case of discursive thoughts, excessive discursive thoughts, you meditate on the movement of the breath. So if you happen to be any one of those 5 types of person, it's absolutely essential that you use that particular meditation object in order to overcome that obstacle. Because in the most essential mental quality that enables you to achieve shamatha is a certain, what's called lesurungwa in Tibetan, which means a certain fitness, a physical fitness or physical and mental fitness, which enables you to develop great ease. And with that ease, then your concentration can rise to the level of shamatha. However, as long as you're subject to those mental afflictions to a strong degree, that fitness will never be able to be cultivated. That obstacle will always prevent you from developing that facility. So just as if you need, like, in order to cultivate a field, you need to make the ground level. You need to remove obstacles like boulders and tree trunks or stumps and things that prevent you from being able to cultivate the field properly. In the same way, you need to cultivate that specific meditation object primarily to overcome that predominant obstacle that would otherwise be an insurmountable impediment to developing one-pointed concentration. If you happen to be a person who falls into the latter 2 categories, you can use any one of those 5 meditation objects that were mentioned, whichever one you seem most drawn to. But at any rate, this is an essential point in the overall process of trying to develop shamatha, is that certain types of persons are subject to certain types of mental flaws, predominant mental flaws, and unless those flaws are the hindrance that those flaws would pose for any kind of one-pointedness of mind, unless what the hindrance that they pose is broken and sort of cleared away, there's no possibility of properly developing shamatha. The best you can do is to develop something that is a fairly strong level of concentration, but not true shamatha, which is qualified by special and profound states of ease that enable you to have a very powerful form of one-pointed concentration.
kumrin papa dang tamales dishinship kula mingne tingin juba sunglas lobe changju sangbe jang dil shine ni de kanangdu tebe toba dang ka chidu tebe migba us tela kanangdu teba la ni de lula migba dang lula temba la migba us tela lula migba la sumdes lu ni la hai number migba dang kingrula soba mituba migba dang kadam gala soba chema chebajina migba us lula temba la nga des ula mikpa dang sema chamo la mikpa dang tire la mikpa dang yuse gi yala la mikpa dang gawa dang dewa la mikpa us ka chide ba la mikpa la ni des chebara chen dang heba us tela chebara chen ni de kula mikpa dang sula mikpa us she mangbu she des lamdyo gi deba yang te changsu so da.
So then continuing on, so Lama Tsongkhapa says, then relying now, he's shifting to other authoritative texts in particular, the Kamalashila's Bhavana Krama texts. So I should read. So it says here, Kamalashila's middle and last stages of meditation. So there are three, there's a series of three works that all have the same title, stages of meditation. So the middle one is the second one, and the last means the third one. So in those two of the three stages of meditation works, and Kamalashila cites in particular, actually he doesn't really explain it, but he makes reference to, he alludes to this sutra called the Sutra on the Concentration which Perceives the Buddha of the Present Face to Face. And of course the Sanskrit title is given here. And he says, Kamalashila says that particular sutra talks a lot about how to meditate on the physical form of a Tathagata, focusing on the body of the Tathagata. So that's one primary meditation object, and that's the one that Tsongkhapa is going to take up here in this text. And then Kamalashila also makes reference to a verse, and this one he quotes that's the King of Concentration Sutra, which is a very famous Mahayana sutra. And he says, and so Kamalashila is essentially presenting as an object of meditation, focusing on the physical form of a Buddha. And then Lama Tsongkhapa also makes reference to Master Bodhibhadra. Master Bodhibhadra was one of Lama Atisha's personal teachers, and Lama Atisha, who wrote the Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, which is was considered the root text for Tsongkhapa's own treatise on the stages of the Path to Enlightenment. And there is a commentary. It's referred to as an auto commentary, so it's at the bottom of the page. You see a reference to it, and so that text makes reference specifically to a work by Bodhibhadra, who was, as I said, Atisha's personal teacher. And so Bodhibhadra taught about the subject of concentration, developing one point concentration, and in particular his work, the one that's cited in Atisha's commentary, refers to various kinds of meditation objects. So he says, in this paragraph, that's a quotation, he says, serenity or shamatha is twofold, one which is attained by looking inward, and one which is based on an object of meditation that's viewed outwardly. Inward means within yourself, some aspect of your own being, and one that's viewed outwardly is, for example, the object of a Buddha. So it says, looking inward is twofold, focusing on the body, which means some element of your own physical being, and the other one is focusing on what is based on the body, means some aspect of the body. So those focusing on the body is to meditate on your body as having the form of a deity is one way of doing that. Focusing on ugliness, such as skeletons, is another way of looking at. You're actually meditating on corpses and disembodied remains of beings as part of the meditation on what's here ugliness, and then you identify that it was that you have that fate that is waiting for you at some point. And then here it says focusing on a special insignia. Means insignia here means a symbol, such as a katwanka is a staff that yogis carry, and so that can also be a meditation object, and that can be something that is meditated on and inside your own body. So then meditating what is based on the body, means some element of the body, then this is just a way of classifying meditation objects. Is what is based on the body. One of them would be focusing on the breath, focusing on a subtle divine insignia. Insignia here is again the same thing. Some object that, for instance, that's deities often held in the hand, or something that's a symbol of attributes of the deity. And then drops, focusing on drops, are subtle substances throughout the body that you can meditate on. Light rays can be part of, elements that pervade your body. And then you can also meditate on mental states, so delight and bliss, and use them as something that you concentrate on. So then that's the inward objects, according to Bodhibhadra's classification. And then the object of meditation that's viewed outwardly is, he says, a special one and a common one. The special one is focusing on a deity's body and focusing on a deity's speech. And I don't know, it doesn't say what the common one is. No,
no.
All right, anyway, so so this is something that is a different way of classifying meditation objects based on other authoritative texts that Tsongkhapa uses as resources for his own presentation. No, sir.
아니 가스나 가수 법에 미방 우유송와 세게 미바 다직 체르 강사 제다발라 공도 다 대시 잡사와와 다 가수 가스나 다직 차소니 뭐 받으니 직 차년 받아 시중화 강사들라 미바 수수 가리 쪼와디 챤다 디그리스는 직 송호가 할 된다 흉도 가스나 다 미바디 나네장 아니 디신시비 구슬라 미네 공바디 아니 미바베 직 가스나 직 상요레스 이미 쿵디라 아니 디니마 가스나 룽마 주장도와 아니 이무슨도 주비 띵에서 도체 띵에서 잡고체 고브리 바바다 타마체 다나시 아니 로변 장주 숭숭체 아니 지 람드는 어디 튼준 나네 갈 수 공장에 가스나 다 미바 튼준 나네 장테니 초도 교와디 아니 구슬라 미네 아니 공바디 아니 신의 공바디 미바 상쇼레스다 이 정도에서 군생 가르쳤으나 아니 디신시비 구슬라 미네 공바디 다 가스나 알아서 말씀드린다디 빼디다 식비 아니 식발라 도 나니 술도세디 식비 술고 도디 아니 배 가스나 식반이기 고치고 와라 빨리 예당 술이 니가라 고치고 와라 식비 술고 도디 딘낭신신이 아니 디신시비 구슬라 미네 공바디 소소기 띵엔지야 공부도 줘야기 되니 미바 치와 마세 아니 초사바등 아니 산제 지수 중화등 아니 제수 되니 소소 알아마 슈와이나 아니 디신시비다 지라니 하고 공부고인들라더니 징기다 지 저바 용하게 뭐 팀적이 제발 뭐 니다 대바 인상 아니 미바 이제 공도 수만나니 다 미바 상쇼디 아니 디신시 우슬라 미네고 되니 공바디 상쇼레 신다 농아주기 아니 제시디 수무도 소디 정시 맞어
가르사 기시라 식백 고수머베 파츠 고 식백나 고치 파츠 드라야 수머베
식비 도여와 식발라다 도 식비 수르라 식발 도 데여와 다 식비 수르기 도스나 다 수르시여와 초시 거기 수르시라 어디 수르기 도디 달 식반이기 고치고 와라
레스 okay so then what you should kind of what you should understand Lama Tsongkhapa is doing here is probably the principal source material is from Asanga's Yogacara literature, in the case of Shravaka Bhumi and the various other texts that are kind of the subject matter and the theory behind cultivating shamatha, which is yet to be presented. But here, then, having made the point in the just mentioned paragraph about different kinds of personality types, rather than focusing on describing each of those 5 specific meditation objects, then Tsongkhapa sort of keys on the last 2 personality types, which is the person who is not who does not have one of those 5 predominantly, but for which they are all more or less equally effective. Not one is stronger than the other, or then in the best case, someone who has less mental afflictions, less tendency to develop mental afflictions. So that person will, obviously is the person that's going to develop shamatha most easily. So the point that he made at the end of that previous section was that any one of those persons of those latter two categories can pick whatever meditation object they find most suitable. And then when we make the transition to this next series of texts, right, which include two versions of Kamalashila's works, in which he quotes the Samadhi Raja Sutra and the other sutra has a very long name, and then also Bodhibhadra's text, which is quoted in the commentary to Atisha's Lamb for the Path to Enlightenment, the auto commentary to it, where Atisha quotes his own teacher's work, where there are additional classifications, but the focus, or one of the key meditations object is meditating on the physical form of a Buddha in particular. And so that's the meditation object that Tsongkhapa is going to present as the he says the best, right? The best form of meditation object for a number of reasons. And the Geshe said that one of the things that he says in the very next section that we haven't come to yet, which is what are the advantages what are the special advantages of using the physical form of a Buddha as your object to cultivate a one-pointed concentration. And he says it's kind of like a cornerstone. So a cornerstone in a building is one that is, principal stone at the corner, one of the four corners of a building that supports both two walls that it is, linked to. And so using that as a kind of a metaphor, an analogy, using a Buddha as a meditation object is not only an exceptional meditation object for cultivating one-pointed concentration, but by the way, incidentally, then as you reflect on the unique character of a Buddha, the unique characteristics of a Buddha, what a Buddha represents, then that will also enable you to accumulate, to cultivate, to collect, to obtain, to develop large amounts of virtue. And that virtue helps to further ripen your mind. And then as your mind becomes more mature, then all your other spiritual practices will become more powerful and more effective. Yes.
Study all the matters in Shugi. Tell us Sanjay Kula Simzimani, Sanjay Jesu Temba Yimbe, Sonum Taiba Kiawatans, Ude Namba Sashing, Tena, Chadang, Chobadang, Molamla Soba, Tosobi, Shingdang, Shadamla Sobi, Tiba Jongwi Shing, Migba Chebala, Kebrashin to Chewatans, Martingi Jabu, Chongbatar, Chivice, Sanjay Jesu Temba, Minyamba So, Be Yundian Dance. Sangagi Lam Gombana, Tai Nanjola Shindu, Cheva Sogi, Gobam, Mambu Nangdes, Di Pyondang Sanje, Yila Chazul, Geba Tadagi, Sanje, Musundu should be Tingizing, Dona, Chesawa, Shubes, Gombin Tamale, Sumbatar, Nyabati Sheba Chais, Dini Mansu Tone Madisus, Tena Tingizing, Jubala, Goba, Chebarjinang, Shians, Shala, Tobi, Migde, Tsoani, Tabla Cheba Inu.
So that description of the special advantages of using the physical form of a Buddha as your meditation object is what this next paragraph is directly describing. So it says to keep your attention on the physical form of Buddha, it represents, and then it says to recall the Buddha. To recall the Buddha, or recollection of the Buddha, is in fact itself the name of a specific, form of spiritual practice. There are various ways. There are 6 recollections. One is the recollection of the Buddha, and that's something which was taught by the Buddha, has many great benefits to it. So meditating on the physical form of Buddha promotes that specific practice. And he says, because of that, you will develop limitless merit, limitless virtue. So just using that as a meditation object in and of itself, regardless of how well you succeed in practicing one-point concentration, it's going to promote collecting merit and virtue. And then it says, in addition to that, so the second half of that, which is like the cornerstone serving two purposes, to hold up two walls, he says, when you develop a clear image of that physical form, all right? So it says here, when your image of that body is clear and firm, then that will also, by virtue of that, strength of concentration, will lend great benefits to other spiritual practices, such as prostrations. So when you're doing prostrations, you can visualize the Buddhas, for instance, 35 Buddhas. You can visualize them clearly, or even just the Buddha Shakyamuni or whatever form. And so your act of prostration is done with greater clarity and concentration. When you make acts of offerings, devotional offerings, then the object to whom the offerings are being presented, you can form a clear image of that in your mind, and that will lend that act, more, make it more, stronger. Same way when you're carrying out aspirational prayers, etc. And then when you're purifying obscurations through confession and restraint, and those are the two elements of the act of purification, then visualizing the object in front of whom you are carrying out that act of confession, it allows those acts to be that much more effective. So he says this kind of meditation serves many purposes. So therefore, Tsongkhapa is giving you reasons for why meditating on the form of Buddha is particularly apt and one that is very beneficial to use. And then here it says, earlier in the extract of the King Concentration Sutta, di Kalsang ngar tingin singi gyawo do drang di Kalsang kyamjok kabriwe.
Di tingin si jabu do ting yagi gangla.
Chiwetse sangi just drama say di.
Odi e gangla ji drang yorwa yagi kanda. O ti do ti nangdun. Do ma drang ode. Do jela ma jogging in the dodi.
Alelon. So here it makes reference to an earlier extract from the Kyum Concentration Sutta. This is here we're at the subject of shamatha, but much earlier in the Lamrim Chenmo during the Kibuchungun Kagrwa. So it's in the first section on the instruction for lesser persons. I believe it's in the section on taking refuge. That it says that if you use if you've been meditating on a Buddhist physical form and you have you've developed a clear image of that Buddha, then that gives you the advantage that when you're passing away, which is can be a very disturbing experience to go through, then you can recall that image and that enables you to practice such things as taking refuge at the time of your death. So, this is the ability to recall the Buddha at such crucial times as when you're facing death. That's another great benefit. In addition, it mentions that while the Lamrim Chenmo, this is a Sutrayana text, doesn't really it makes reference to Tantrayana practices. One of the key elements of Tantrayana practice is deity yoga, and deity yoga means identifying yourself with the divine form. So if you cultivated that in relation to a Buddha image as part of the Lamrim practices, then that helps you to cultivate similar practices in the field of tantric practice. So he says, Gava Mangbo means there are a great many purposes to using this as a meditation object. Then it mentions here, they make again the benefits of doing so, the benefits of using a Buddha's image. Here, Tsongkhapa makes reference to that, what I refer to as a sutra with a long name. The sutra on the concentration to perceive the Buddha, the present, face to face, is the one that Kamalashila referenced in his text. So that's a sutra that has been translated. It is in the Gangyur. And so he's recommending, Lama Tsongkhapa here is recommending that you, if you have the opportunity to read that sutra in relation to that particular point about all the benefits of meditating on a Buddha's form. So then he says he doesn't want to take the time to include all those detail points here because be, as he says, fearing verbosity. So he says, anyway, he says it's a very skillful means that. So he says it's a very skillful means to choose a meditation object which will have many additional benefits besides promoting the development of one-pointed concentration.
지가스나 띵인진 고바 주부 마이베 띵인진 기더니 곰비 쇼라 드니 고발 켜바진 요바 체네다 말아서 견단대 마치고 그래서 이제 미된 소주디 켜바 제국의 군센디 아니 진다디 나온데 송도 근데 전에 다 간데스레스나 배나 미바 망부 쇼주 공라 송어때 다 딘나네 다 말아서 다지 지 차소니 뭐바 차님 받다 중화된데 강사기다 시내 공발라 통마 진이 지 주위나 디신시비 꾸술라 미네 공바디 아니 가스나지 소놈 타에바 사기레스 사당디다 레레니 마이 카스 우신 송도와 베나 소소 집중 치발라 소소발라 아니 가나도 쳐바포 포알라 소바다 지 예라도 미쳐발라 소바 치인데 산지 디신시바 쿠세 담니 아니 디딘도 쳐바 피고레 지바 정인데 디니 가스나 이부 톱시기 디니 가스나 땡기 톱 스네 디니 가스나 잠루 심게 스네다 잠루기 삼무 당연데 디신시비 꾸술라 미고레 야나신 그런주 치가라무르 되는 집에 가서나 디신시비 꾸수 제인시면 안에 치와이나 개와 주마디야 나직 산지 제수 되는 배 디신시비 때마다 집이 그바 쳐봐 주용해 오다 나신신에 되는 나란주 상하게 남 곰디야 라닐 하라 깨고디 아니 직나 도이값수 되는 막이 신의 고무용되니 아니 디신시비 꾸수라 미바야 오지 템부 제여나 아니 나기 똑바야 나기다 남 고무용디야 하고 친이버 고무용되니 그 아니 배 응알리 민자위 위에 그래 신주산이다 디 고바 망부진다 디 초서바 지바 정와 산제 제수 정와 소바 고바 신야 망부지 띵인지 공배도 좋아 주고 말해 고바 신다야 망부지 토부도 와스 인자 다 미바디 초에라 아니 미바 가리 마체와체 아니 지 디시시 꾸술라미는 고바디 아니 미바 신다 민자위는 쳐버 친구이자 디미가 추술라 쳐바 제거래 신다 추술이 나온된디 나라 보다 디송도 오서다 되는 좀
So while this paragraph is fairly clear, it's worth emphasizing the point that Lama Tsongkhapa is making here, which is to say that while there's a great variety of meditation objects that one could use in order to cultivate one-pointed concentration. And everything else being equal, it wouldn't really matter too much which one of those you chose, assuming that you were a person who was not subject to one of those 5 flaws, for example. However, Lama Tsongkhapa says that that what's particularly what represents a skillful method, what he refers to as a skillful method, is the fact that while your main practice consists of trying to cultivate one-pointed concentration, if at the same time, sharla means incidentally, you're able to build, and if you're able to strengthen a variety of other essential spiritual practices, such as when you take refuge, when you generate bodhicitta. Those are two of the most fundamental elements of the Mahayana path. And in both of those cases, having the nature of enlightenment, the nature of Buddhahood, are essential elements of both of those practices. So to the degree that you've cultivated the image of a Buddha, and in connection with that, reflected on the attributes of a Buddha, then your faith in the Buddha will be correspondingly stronger. And it mentions in particular also the practice of recollection of the Buddha as being another essential fundamental Buddhist practice, something that is enhanced by having by developing the more clarity, more aspects of concentration that you develop in relation to a Buddha's image, then that will lend some strength to all this other range of other spiritual practices, such as also confession. In relation to confession, the elements of it, you confess. One aspect of it is the basis or the foundation or the support for it is taking refuge in bodhicitta, and so Buddha is integral to both of those aspects, and it helps you to cultivate many other kinds of virtue, and also not to forget the fact that deity yoga involves visualizing yourself in a divine form, and so meditating on a Buddha's physical image as a way of trying to cultivate one point of concentration goes a long way towards your later ability, if you choose to pursue tantric practices, goes a long way toward promoting deity yoga. So there are a great many such benefits that are kind of incidental to using the Buddha's image as the focus of your one-pointed concentration, and therefore it is when he says skillful means, what he means is that it is it is what should I say? It's his way of encouraging you not to choose other meditation objects, but to use that one for its great value. So as Kishla noted at the beginning, he wanted to leave some time towards the end of the class for questions that some of you might have, and so we'll stop the discussion or explanation of the text and give any of the students or listeners an opportunity to raise a question. I'm not sure how you Champel, are you going to kind of monitor that, or?
Yes. If they're going to type it, then I'll say the
question.
Okay. If not, then
Hello.
take turn speaking.
Okay.
Hello, Kishla.
Hello.
나 좋아니 좋아 당부디 단다디 대신시와 국 공백가라 대신시와디 뜸바 샤지 두바 지고를 구월에 현신달 구월에 좋아 당부디 디지 좋아니와디 대신시와 국 아주 공백가라 상계 꾸치고 공부래야 상계 연대념도 공부래 간대래
디 거절 인지 지시나 저도 인지 지시 아 다지기래 알아보지 디 렌치 잖아 안는
다든다디 코난기 좋아니도 아디 당고디 디신시바 곰 우수라 미고레스 디신시바디 뜸바 셔제도 지구레 신다양 곰 직체 셔바디 셔제도 곰면디 아니 콩 꾸주부 곰메레 디게디니 윤대 신다양 곰고레스 좋아니도 와 당고디라 다 디신시바디 진다 말아서 다 집에 산지 처음에 봐 줘요. 왔다 수수 가리라 몇 봐요. 봐. 뜸바 때 양다나시 아직 베나직 산제다 지 데비 산제 나라이나 산제다 세두다 코아지다 몽부주 중화래 아니 몽부 산제 잡아 참바요래 다나신 아니 나게 가돌아이나다 지 나란조다 지 산제 주승 이당을 하소든 고메요래 다디 소소게 디신시 구수세데다 디신시바디 아니 산제 탐제 소소게 묘바 가리유비 산제 나란조가 다자기 때문에 시작도 진주 인상 아니 다자 때문에 시작도 구수도 명가이나 나란조 덴제 여성 미세기 둘켜봐진 요래선 흉나 디순거래 다나신 저는 저번 다지 결락이 저번 니와기 랜드라 갈스나다 디신시 구수라면 고면도 담보 구수 되게 가스나 마금 거네 담보 구수도 야고 제 구수디와다지 군다이나레 셰다이나데 야고 제니 담보 디 군다디라 프로지 로라 샴노드는 디람니과도 생담이 지 마츠습니다 근데 곰니 김대진이 구수도 야고 제더니 야 셋업 투고나 디니 신이 디니 구수기 디니 숨기 연된다 아니 투기 연된 소리 마신도 그러면 어디 당부 꾸디 당부 야고 샤르마도나 아니 꾸디 제수드니 숭 대회장 갈라고 텔레 투기 연된 대회에 갈라고 봐서 당부 지 레라쇼 구수도 야고 지 샤드 아니 구수기 미남디 샤세베 제라 디니 디레 데즈 차루다니 오늘 숭기 연된들라 양민고 디네진 디레 차루다니 투기 연된 줄 미, 누구스니다 범위모도 지기 당부 고민디 다 락쇼 다 롤라 차대쇼디 말아서 통화다 튜브 유도 주와서 배전할 때 송여래 미기 통화당 튜브 유도 주와서 말아서 미기 디신시바고 디네디네 열다스니 마티시 자민데 암조로 고해요와 담미기 네 말아서 디신시비 군자당 아니 shedanzu je yorwa o tine ya boji samon tane tene gom jayendu da tunji samon tangsa ji yezan ti gomba ti keche wa resin da di tungo res o tine da di chiwa ni gi lendi o
So, for those of you that did not understand the question, since it was spoken in Tibetan, the questioner, the student asked, when you say that you should use the Buddha's or the Tathagata's physical form as your meditation object, does that mean that the Buddha or the Tathagata is referring to the Lord of Munis? Is that referring to Buddha Shakyamuni exclusively? Is Lama Tsongkhapa saying that you should only use the physical form of the historical Buddha? That was the first part of his question. The second part of the question was, when you're meditating on the physical form of as your meditation object for cultivating shamatha, do you then also reflect on attributes of the Buddha? Is that something that is part of taking a Buddha as a meditation object? And so that in response to that two-part question, the answer was given to the first part that the term Tathagata, the term Buddha, refers to any number of limitless enlightened beings, whether they be the Buddhas of the past, like Dipankara and Kashyapa, or Buddhas of the future, like Maitreya, and other Buddhas as well. Or even tantric forms of Buddha, such as the great tutelary deities of Guhya Samaja and Chakrasamvara and Yamantaka. You could use any one of those as an enlightened being as your meditation object. However, since we are all largely followers of the system that is, that's still prevalent in the world, is a system that was established by the historical Buddha, Buddha Shakyamuni, then, in the text, Lama Tsongkhapa is primarily making reference to Buddha Shakyamuni's form. That doesn't necessarily mean that you should limit yourself to that physical form. As far as the second part of the question relating to whether you should introduce as you're meditating on the physical form, other attributes of a Buddha or the Buddha, whether they be verbal qualities or mental qualities or other attributes rather, then the point to recognize is that the most basic or the most I'm going to say roughest is necessarily the proper term, but the physical aspect of Buddha is the one that's easiest to take hold of, to hold in the mind. So that's the one that we see, that we can see in visual representations, whether they're paintings or whether they're statues, and when people a teacher can also describe to us the physical qualities of the Buddha. Those are the easiest forms of an enlightened being for us to grasp in our mind. So then actually the process of shamatha involves a progression, a successive way of engaging the object. So in the beginning, even the physical form of the Buddha, we're not able to grasp it with great clarity in all its detail, but we start out with just sort of the outline or the main elements of the physical, the torso of the body, and maybe a head and some aspect of the limbs. And then we just use that vague image as our meditation object. Then later we can add more and more detail and more clarity to the meditation object, or as the clarity begins to become stronger, then we can make that visual image more precise. In addition, once the physical image becomes quite clear, then we can add to that other attributes of a Buddha, such as the qualities of speech, and then even more subtle or more deeper in meaning are what are the mental qualities of Buddha. So this is something that we can do progressively as we continue to focus on that main meditation object. Yes.
I have a very quick question. This is Janet. Nice to see you, Art. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure. Go ahead.
When we're talking about the different objects of meditation for different mental afflictions and things like that, and how on page 42, they're talking about how it's just important to know what afflictions you have and choose the appropriate meditation to go with that. But then I just want to make sure I'm understanding properly. It says towards the bottom of page 42, it says alternatively, that we can start meditating on the Buddha, the image of the Buddha. Does that mean regardless of whatever your mental afflictions are, that then like anybody, whether it's pride or desire or whatever, that meditating on the Buddha is going to be an adequate practice?
Oh, okay. Kalsang, mikbage korlia ane tangbo di nyentoki sanang ne jaban namjongi mikbadang ane Kalsang kansa ki rigmenda ta dun yebenang ne tang nga deto ane nyomong chetraba chechawa yobe deto ki ane koransu chik injiminji chik ta Kalsang koransu la pakpagi mikbachik gomguge was sunyoare ane di nyensan ki shugla tagara ane kapene Kalsang kamala shila tang ane George ki Kalsang Lamrim kadre nang ne sumbana shin yang sangi ki kuchi gomna jige rs chik sungdu ganlia ane dini ni ki to chik Kalsang shetan to ka loga sor chik 통기 도사 제자디 아니 강가로 그 상기 그 꾸디 몇번 직 담나 지기를 왜 간자스 찍고 그랬어요.
알레 라스. 다 된다 디가스나 신내기 미방 외송의 값을 쓴 거래서. 그래서 신내기 미바디 셈 미바라 세지도 내게 띵해진 계지시고와 다 디지도 신내기 미바디가 둘라 담보 신내기 띵해지 셈 강화 댄서기 셈 고랑 차소 유모바 슉 침부지 임바이나 담보 디 셈당 류니 레스 속에라 객치긴 또 차소 유모바 슉 침부요디 아니 디니 어두서 마마소나 디신시비 구슬라 미네지 대아이나 차소 디슈 치고도 손이 구슬라 미네 다룬 아니 유모한테 폐액이 년가 요래서 인도산이 아니 공도 송해디 아니 배 신의 공경의 강사직이 아니 지금 레스롱아 속에나 담보 미바디 아니 그 차소 유모바 시 친구지나 녀버도 아니 뒷미바디 치고래 디신시비 구슬라 미바 삼게 차소 되게 변화 되자 친구인 바당 공도 친구인 바 있나 디신시비 구슬라 미바 제와나 디신시비 구슬이 삼노라야 코트에 거랑 아니 신 용에 매바지 차고래 디인상 아니 여기디 녀버도 아니 미바 치라바디 공고래 했으니 공도 인대신이다 정말 뭐 정말 지금 송도와 인도서 차소 유모바디 때즈마 시중도 조인데 디네신이 디신시비 구슬라 미네 고바이나 디네시 가지고 티 신의 공비가 송고 뭐또 야 차소 유모바 시치모 요근 속에 양 딕샤 어떤 가 차소 유모바 시치모도 디 숑중도 다 딕바샤야지 지고도 수비 한 님부터 없이 섬노 땅고디 디네 양 지금 담로 섬제 섬노 땅고를 땡기 또 디치디 아니 때 지가스나 때 군조 숨조 세탑 고디 고 유여바레스 이네 신의 공비가 수시고 레스 네 공비 가둘라 아니 미과디 틴데지 담보 쌤들 이야기 미바쟁이 차소 유모바 보이 맛 중도 마땅와 아니 엔다디 디신시비 구슬라 뭐 가주 미나요 신의 게투베 깔라카부레스인데 디수레스
So the two main points. The initial passage on, you said 42. I happen to have the text, so I looked at it. The first paragraph in identifying the object of meditation for this context, which addresses those 5 types of person who are subject to one of those mental flaws, like desire, hatred, ignorance, pride, and a kind of a busy mind, if you like. The point that the Shravaka Bhumi is making there is saying that if you're subject to one of those mental afflictions in particular, to the degree that that is predominant in you, and if it's predominant in you, then if you were to choose a different meditation object than the one that the Shravaka Bhumi specifies for each of those 5 types of person, then you could meditate on that other meditation object. You could develop certain levels of concentration, but the principle that's being made there, or the point that's being made there, is you're virtually impossible for you to develop shamatha. So the idea is that you have an obstacle, sort of a built-in impediment that will not allow you to develop shamatha unless you focus on the specific antidote to that mental, flaw. That's kind of the main point. Then it says at the very end of that paragraph, in the next the next paragraph after that's very short. It says if you're a person of balanced behavior, meaning a person in which any one of those 5, none of those 5 is stronger than the other, you're still subject to mental afflictions, but not to a high degree. Or if you're a person with slight mental afflictions, means that your mental afflictions are rather weak, he says, then you can use any meditation object. You can use any one of those 5, or you can use the Buddha's, the physical form of a Buddha, or whatever. So then the transition from that discussion, which comes in the Shravaka Bhumi, and when Tsongkhapa then shifts to the Kamala Shila and Bodhibhadra, then he is assuming, or he's taking as a starting point that you're one of those latter 2 types of person, one in which they are all balanced, so it's no one of those faults is stronger than the other in an overwhelming way, or you're one in which the mental afflictions are particularly strong. In that case, you can choose any meditation object because you can choose any meditation object you might like, then he proposes that if you are in that category of practitioner, you would do well to choose the physical form of a Buddha, because that meditation object has all these kind of ancillary or these, secondary benefits that you'll, automatically derive by using the object, the physical form of a Buddha as your meditation object. So that's kind of the way to understand what the point of view is from those two different passages. Also, you should understand that all of this is being done. All of these discussions at this point in the commentary are being presented from the main perspective of someone who's trying to develop shamatha. On the other hand, there are many other practices that all of us need to cultivate, that are sort of basic elements of the practice, such as the seven limb practice, or cultivating taking refuge in bodhicitta and so on, and so for those practices, spending some time meditating on the physical form of Buddha, whether or not it's sufficient or ideal for you to develop shamatha, using that meditation object will enhance those other spiritual practices. So you have to understand sort of the value and the specific benefit of the particular meditation objects, and then take the overall perspective of what it takes to actually achieve the ultimate goal of shamatha, which is what this section of the text is really addressing. I hope that clarifies it.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think I was just thrown by that word alternatively and interpreted it to mean everything before that point. But no, that helped a lot. So thank you so much, Tujiche. Okay, thank you.
Hello, Art. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We were talking about the specific antidotes to the various afflictions, but I know Khenso Rinpoche was also talking about the idea of, in the post-meditative state, looking at all conventional reality as an illusion. Wouldn't that be a broad-based way, if you feel like there's a sort of some afflictions are more acute at some times than others? And can also Geshe clarify when is it appropriate to meditate on impermanence?
I'm sorry, I understood you to say that you recall Gyume Khenso talking about meditating on illusoriness in the post-meditative state.
Right, and with regard to looking at your day-to-day conventional reality.
Yes. Okay. And
is that a way to kind of sort of cover a broad spectrum of the afflictions?
Oh, I see.
And then the other thing is, when is it appropriate to meditate on impermanence?
Okay. Ta tiwa di la yang tiwa di la karsa nengani tu chikti ane ngema ta karsa Gyume Khenso ge sungju nang ya ane karsa ta peche di karsa toni gombe toni gi kor nyamsha nangata nyamsha nangata komsu chiktang ane jedogi nega le gyumata komsu chik tati karsa modi gi di jengidu sa ane Gyume Khenso gi di karsa jedogi nega delia ane gyumata chik karsa semla mikpache di semla chik gomya dan chik yila che dan jamya di ane di gomtu gangla karina di soso gi chalam karsa chalam gi negab delia ane nyomon di tots karsa ma chuk chunu doya chik tap sori chik tongi dus chesan di ane tanda shinegi kap delia ane 가르사 녀몬 때쪽에 녀몬 셰자와 때쪽이야 아니 다가난시 아니 규모도 다가서 처 탐제 규모도 이모디 일라 지도방디 양디 믹세기 시네기 객 때쪽 지금 자야기 팽기를 왜 직접에 아니 니바디기 양 가르사다 미타바기 거 미타바디 초 미타바디 아니 시내기 거기는자 가두이는데 가두지 검구요 레스
라스로스 다 딘다디 저니 콜로스 디레다 딘다디 아니 지 다루미지기 송에기 딘다디 튠잠 가둘라 규마다 보르와다 제도 규마다 보 세디다 튠잠 아니 데바투와 나양 데바 마투비 장신 와티 베드라 규마다 보디르와 다 남가다 보스티다 가자 가슴 좁아 메가 고메디르와다
머리를
이다 튠잠 내가들라 아니 규마다 보스는다 데바투와 나양 데바 마투비 장신 세지 무지스니다 된다 아니 신내라양 차소니모 받은 줄아야 규마다 보 곰니 차소니모 바 시중도 답에 답시 여러겠으나 디 덴데 여러 디 규마다 보대양 데바투와 나양 데바 마투 규마 멤버치 소소에 배나 콩로 시신부지랑이나 콩로 랑사기 시디 아니 콩로디 소소의 루이기 쩌겨래마도 의빈이들다 메도아 규마다 부려야 섬미딩비랑 섬무탄 규마다 비토니양 디가에 아니 차바치 집이 내가 들어 차바치 유대야 소소기 되는 낭조 응원에 되는 벨 하바 도다는 통화래마도 의빈이들로 된지지 야 섬 진짜기 규마다 비 제시자야디 우리스 양 나디 남신념샤 남가다 보다 지도 규마다 부세디 이 차소 시치비 갑둘라티 고모가잖아 다른 디 차소기 다 가라 마 주면샤네 다른 끼엔처럼 줘야기 가지나고 돈이 고아디 파샤네 남봉이라 차소니 뭐마도디 그걸 투교자기로 와 인도산이 고라고랑 박수지기 규마다 보고 메여레스 디 자기네 쉬어대 어딘데 찍지 아니 나 치와 미다바 고말라 때네 신의 고메세지 송소알라티 어디에 이거 다가서나지 치윈 나바 고말라 때네 아니 나랑 좀 마스나 취해라다 야 꾸마치 얘기로 와 아니 당고진이 집에 치윈 나바디 고마 차고 있습니다 인중 고알라 인중 계획이 당고 계획 어디 치윈 나바 고메도 송여로 와 나바 고메디라 때네 아니 고 치윈 미다바디 미다비랑시 다가랑 미니 티니 신에게 양미가요 공부도 줘야도 응으로 와 응으로데 이네 신나 스타트 주비잖아 다 중앙나 시조게 되는 미관주당 아니 티 마인 베드네 티시 구슬라 미바디 제나 때를 마메로스면 가서 이게 미바디 가줄라 시스템당 류니 레스로가 수에 가줄라 지금 답이 나바디야 시네스타 두주비 가줄라 티 공가 제나 텐덴 다다지 저 아용한스 말한게
So regarding the two kinds of meditation that you thought of as the first one you mentioned specifically whether or not that would be effective in overcoming the types of strong mental afflictions that might be inhibiting your shamatha meditation, and then the second part of the question about when you might meditate on impermanence. Although you didn't address Shine in particular, I suppose you probably were thinking that it possibly could be used as a way of meditating on one-pointed concentration. So addressing those two elements of your question, definitely the nature of meditating on emptiness, right? So when we say that you meditate on things as being illusory in the post-meditative state, that particular instruction and that particular form of practice is something that it comes under the category of cultivating wisdom, which is, this can be thought of as the topic that comes after shamatha, and more specifically, meditating on illusoriness is something that that presupposes or is is based upon the fact that you're meditating on emptiness itself, or the space-like form of meditating on emptiness during the meditation period, and then it's when you having cultivated on that form of emptiness, which is a mere negation of self-existence, then when you emerge from that formal meditation session, then when you see things dualistically, then you reinforce what you meditated on during the meditation period by reminding yourself that that these things that appear to be self-existent are false appearances and therefore they're illusory. So I'm sure that you recall that that's the nature of the explanation that Ngawang Khyentse gave. It, in a general sense, definitely meditating on emptiness in either way, whether during the meditation period or in the post-meditation stage, have a very what's the word? They're very beneficial. They're very much promote the overcoming of the mental afflictions. So clearly the mental afflictions are based on the idea that things are self-existent. So if you're meditating on the antidote to self-existence, then that sort of undermines the very factors that lead to generating the mental afflictions. So that's certainly a way of overcoming them. However, if you want to look at this form of practice as just within the context of trying to cultivate shamatha, if you try to introduce something like the elements of wisdom, it may, before you have a really firm understanding of it, to meditate on it, with great clarity, it may not really be all that helpful to developing shamatha specifically. So that was one point. The second point was about impermanence. So impermanence is one of the earliest meditations in the Lamrim practice, and it's meant primarily to overcome attachment to this life. That's a specific purpose. However, in fact, when you're practicing shamatha, so that the subject haven't reached the details of what it means to cultivate that practice, but there are two main obstacles to shamatha, one of which is a mind that is easily distracted, or the mind that begins to get scattered when you're trying to develop one point of concentration. And if that tendency of your mind to wander when you're trying to develop one point of concentration is overwhelms you during your meditation period, one of the things that you can do is meditate on, or you can recall former topics of meditation, such as impermanence, as a way of sort of subduing your mind, and so you bring it back to to the main practice of shamatha. However, you would not take impermanence itself as a principal meditation topic to cultivate shamatha itself.
Okay. Tochi J. Geshe, I'm so grateful to have you here with us, Art. Please return soon.
Lasso. Tochi. Lasso. Pedida that Chusukiava Kalsang, Chuguba Mochi Juguare. Michigan, Nala, which in the Genetic.
That Tamshana.
Lasso.
Stop. Yeah.
Yes. Since for the purpose of meditating on the Buddha is here for the purpose of achieving meditative serenity, and the vividness of the object is important, can one choose a Buddha that one is familiar with in one's own experience?
You're saying if you're using the physical form of Buddha as your meditation object, do you have the option to use a particular form that you're familiar with? I'm not sure what you mean by one they're familiar with. You mean an image that you have and use that particular?
I think he is asking not necessarily about the form, but he's asking, can you choose a specific Buddha that one is familiar with in one's own experience? Like perhaps one has a proclivity to like Amitabha Buddha. And could you use like Amitabha Buddha as the meditation object?
Okay. I mean, I think that question was answered, but I'll raise it anyway. Yeah. Takarasa, ya taginti chua tamudi kapdelia ane tube di dejin shepe kula chik mikten chik 제야디 투베와 묵장강을 왜 직티브를 왔다 주었다 뭐디 딱 그런 디다나 신시 제두가 딱 가르사 상계기 꾸디 소소소소기 다 뭐바여봐 소소소소기 로당 튼바 임바기 다 상계 베나 워바메기 인한다 가리인치 드제치 믹텐치 담나 지기를 왜 했어요
어레디 다랑 가슴에 소소 강라 디신셔바 강길라 뭐바 숙제는 콜로라 샤데여로 이제 티치 되기를 했어 다랑 소요를 했어
yeah so this is what Geshe, I apologize if I did not make that point clear, but the first question kind of asked that, and Geshe said that that absolutely many commentaries, many treatises that talk about meditation, in fact, say explicitly that whatever form of Buddha you have a strong proclivity for, that you feel a connection with, you're perfectly free, and it's quite appropriate to to take that as your meditation object.
On this land, surrounded by mountains of snow, you are the source of all solace and joy. All powerful Chenmo, Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. To bring blessings of enlightened activities to fortunate disciples, and to spread the textual and inner realization teachings of the Buddha, who embodies the 10 powers, you show the light of logic and teachings to intelligent minds. Oh, I pray to you, our spiritual guide, revealer of the path. May the precious supreme bodhicitta arise in those whom it has not yet arisen, and where it has arisen, may it not decrease, but ever increase more and more. I dedicate this virtue as a cause for gaining a true understanding of the soul medicine that dispels all the illnesses of grasping at extremes, profound meaning of dependent origination that is free from extremes, and the view of the supreme Arya Nagarjuna and his spiritual successors. By this virtue, may all beings perfect the accumulations of merit and wisdom, and achieve the two holy bodies that arise from merit and wisdom.
Let's do this.
Tuchena Gishlata Atla.
Thank you, Art. Thank you, Geshe. Thank you.
Yeah, good night.
Thank you, Geshe.